Hey, what's up? Zach here. In addition to having absolutely no cardiovascular stamina after the holidays, I also have the Asics Solution Speed FF3. And you know, the Solution Speed line to me has been a mixed bag. The ones where, I had a few problems with them, to be honest. The twos I thought were phenomenal, enough to get them into a top 5 list of mine. So the threes, let's see what they come up with. Let's get into it. And a huge thanks to Asics for sending me a pair of the FF3 to check out. However, this video is by no means sponsored. And as always, all opinions are still my own. The uppers of the FF3, you can tell, are designed to try to contain everything you're going to be able to do in these shoes. Because remember, they are designed for speed, and you know, if you want to have a shoe that's designed for speed, you got to be able to harness that, or or contain that. That's why I have a containment score on the URS. But if you look at the lateral side, you've got open meshing as well as in the forefoot. And if you look at that on the microscope, it's like a cavern of weaving, right? And it goes all the way through the shoe, which is pretty cool. But as we'll see on the breathability mapping in a second, there are still a lot of corridors through there. But if you look, the medial side, it's that same weaving, except it's coated right on the top of it. So it's just all one unit. And then that goes into the drag guard here, which is serrated, right? Like an accordion, which allows it to bend a lot easier, especially when you're up on the balls of your foot, which is awesome. But the coating here on the medial side, I kind of think is more for drag protection, as well as to keep the medial side, it just keep a little bit more integrity to it, right, when you're pushing off medially. If you look at it on the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, I mean, that drag guard, that barely makes any impression on that, but it's the fact that it goes so far back in the midfoot that I really like. Now, there is midsole foam in between the tread and that guard, so you will start to rub through the midsole foam, but the uppers are still going to maintain their integrity. Same as for here on the proximal superior aspect of the lace line, you have more reinforcing here for dragging or sliding. Now, these lace eyelets are reinforced on the medial side as well as lateral side, and you do get a runner's knot on both sides. For me, I wanted to use that runner's knot in these that prevented pretty much any heel slipping in them. If you don't use that runner's knot, there is a little bit of play in the heel, but with the runner's knot and just a little bit of break-in, you get a really nice secure feel in these. The only problem with all that molding and that strategic, reinforcing on the FF3 is they can hold on to a little bit of heat. On the breathability test, they did heat up 147.5 degrees. The interesting thing is on the breathability mapping of them, as soon as the fog goes in, it starts coming out of the forefoot just as much as it does the tongue and the cracks in the shoe. So there is a lot of room for breathability in here. So I'd say as long as you're wearing a thin pair of socks, you should be able to get really decent airflow through the shoe, because the airflow is there. There's just some areas, I think almost like spot areas, that hold on to some heat. So just make sure there's enough room for airflow in the forefoot, and you should be just fine. All right, but getting into the midsole teardown, this is a giant bed of Asics flight foam. In the rear foot, you actually get a little bit of a cutout here that you can see through this meshing, and that goes all the way up and communicates with the strobo board, which is incredibly thick. That may also have been a reason for a little bit more of the heat trapping on the breathability test on these. I think maybe that strobo board may have held on to some of that. The nice thing is that at least there's an egress point here in the back for that on your heel. Now, what I think is really the best part of the midsole, and the best part of a lot of midsoles of Asics shoes, is the external shank, or what they call a speed truss. Now, this external base shank is double thickness, and it crosses one zone, midfoot and forefoot. Now, technically it does cross into the rear foot, but that is on the lateral side, and I only count it for a shank score if it crosses it on the plantar side of the foot. But if you want to give it the 0.4, by all means do that. However, I actually cut into this on the lateral side just to make sure that was all one piece, and it is one piece that goes all the way here into the forefoot on the lateral side of the shoe. So it really spans an incredible amount of the shoe, all the way from the posterior aspect of the rear foot to the forefoot. Just gives tremendous containment. I mean, I know the uppers are really well engineered, but it really is this lateral aspect of the shank here that's communicating with the medial side and the plantar side that's really doing, I think, the bulk of the work of the containment. Now, if you look at this setup on the bound tight test, got 29.5 centimeters in the rear foot and then 27.5 in the forefoot. I'm not sure if because there's a little bit of cutout here in the foam, I was trying to miss that cutout with that, but that may have deadened the ball bearing a little bit on this. Suffice to say though, I mean, flight foam has been used on Asics tennis shoes for a while, and if you look at their running lineup, they're using all sorts of different formulations, whereas in tennis, kind of stuck with the same thing, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I know I've said this in a lot of videos, but to me, Flight Foam is much more of a bottom light but very bottom stable foam that allows a lot of forgiveness and shock absorption. To me, the speed and the spring back of most Asics shoes comes from its shank and just geometry of the shoe, which we'll see in the speed ratio in a second. But to me, this shoe does its best when it is, you know, going through your gait cycle, right, or moving side to side, because this shank is just harnessing so much potential energy. And the Flight Foam to me is just keeping the shoe light on the bottom while keeping it very bottom stable. Like I said, there's a reason why it hasn't been changed much over the last few years, because it is just really a dialed in foam for a side to side or a court sport type movement. Anytime a company starts using like new age buzzwords to describe their shoe, like Asics did describing how AI helped inform their outsole tread pattern, I'm usually quick to call BS because usually I think that's marketing jargon. However, I think the robots may actually be taking over, because this is the best outsole tread I think I've ever put on. And no, I'm not just saying that because Asics sent me these shoes. I was really quick to point out a lot of the flaws of Asics and some of their kind of jargon with the Solution Speed #1, the original one. I was pretty critical on that outsole tread. The 2s were better. The 3s are incredible. The forefoot feels so stable on the ground. And I'm not sure if it's because there's a cutout of tread here in the rear foot and there's just so much more just forgiveness back there. But this is some of the easiest transitioning rubber I've ever felt. It feels flat to the ground like a platform when you're first walking on it. It's actually a really weird sensation when you first have mine. I didn't like know what it was gonna do. But as soon as you start bending the shoe, right, because this break point right here is just perfectly placed here, like proximal metatarsal head. As soon as you start moving in it, the shoe just glides through the air. It puts down traction when you want it, and it slides when you want it. It's more of a punched out tread pattern than it is like actual treads jutting out of the shoe. So you can slide in it, but it's got enough gapping and it's just got enough bite to it that it'll grab too. And because the lateral containment is so broad from the heel all the way into the forefoot, you really don't feel unstable either, even though the rear foot is cut out, because that's where I thought you were going to experience the most instability, was in the rear foot, because there's just not as much tread, it's just not as wide. But the shoe kind of all together as a package really creates a lot of feeling of quickness, but also more of a maximalist container feel, almost like the Gel Res 9, and just a little bit more of a nimble, lightweight, swift package. Now, on the grip test ramp, this thing did 35 degrees, which to me, yeah, that's a pretty decent mix between being able to stop on these things and being able to slide. I know with these, I was able to slide a little bit easier than some other shoes, just because, like I said, of the flat profile of the tread pattern. Now, because there is these macro channels in there, I think that's what allows you also to get some grip, you know, when your foot is bending and you're really pivoting hard on these. Now, if you look at the outsole durability test on these, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, if you are doing a lot of sliding and dragging, you're gonna do it for a while, really not even a millimeter of damage on these. The durometer is nice and high. So especially for, like I said, I keep saying this, a speed focused shoe, it's a little bit more minimalist in its trappings. It is still gonna last a while if you're really putting it through the ringer. The only thing, like I said, that's any bit exposed is that midsole foam. I think that's where, like, the only part of this shoe that you're gonna see some durability loss. But considering the Asics Solution Speed FF3 has speed in its name, what are its speed capabilities? Look at the speed ratio of these. It comes in at a 2.34, shank score of 0.3 brings it up to a 2.64. I think that's exactly where these things should sit. Number one, they're just meant for more easy speed, right? They get out of your way. They are lighter shoes, but also super bottom stable shoes. So they allow you to extract as much speed out of them as possible, right? The shank goes super long in the shoe, allowing for a little bit more diving board effect, right? The foam isn't super bouncy, right? It's not like a super Peb or Pebex based foam, but it is super light and stable, allowing you to extract the tools of the rest of the shoe, especially the outsole tread. So looking at the fit of the Solution Speed, they were surprisingly buttery for what they look like. I mean, they do in-flare pretty good, and they don't look like super wide shoes. However, 9.3 centimeter metatarsal width for my size 11, that's pretty decently generous fitting shoe, right? What I noticed is on some of the Solution Speeds, I would have some break-in, bending and snapping when I would first put them on. I guess I should do this with the shoe that's not gonna open. But when bending this way, I was having you know, some issues. With these, I really had no break-in on that. This accordion pattern really helps with that. So I'd say a narrow and medium foot and go true to size. A 2E for me, I would go true to size for a performance fit, or, you know, for a 1-to-1 fit, getting, you know, that little bit of weight reduction, not having to go up 1/2 size. And then for a 4E, I probably would be trying to go up 1/2 size on these. Going up more than that, I think you're gonna be cranking down on the runners not too much. You might start to get a little bit of irritation on the dorsal part of your foot. In terms of the snake bitten foot though, for a shoe with this profile, it really does do an outsized job. I think as long as you are getting this shoe kind of true to size, true to length, then you can fit pretty much any orthotic except for a super bulky orthotic in these. Plus, like I said, the flight foam is so forgiving, and then the external base shank and lateral container all in one do really well for, you know, number one, arch pain, arch strain, heel pain, Achilles tendonitis, and especially for an ankle sprainer looking for a more minimalist, speed-focused performance shoe. This thing is super grounded. Remember, mid-tops or high tops do not stop ankle sprains. It is the midsole shape, midsole density, weight, things like that, stability, outsole shape, and the lateral flange that is doing all of the work there. So don't get caught into that loop. You need a mid-top or a high top for ankle sprain protection. Yes, it does give you more biofeedback for sure, but the ultimate stability in a shoe comes from the bottom. Like I said, that's another reason why flight foam is still used so much, because it's light as well as super stable. So I really, for any snake bite in a minimalist shoe, especially with an orthotic in these, they should be pretty good. So yeah, I mean, the performance of the FF3, it really comes down to the outsole tread and the shank together. Really, you can get just as good performance sliding out of these as you can trying to grip into the court. Really just depends on how much body weight you want to lay down and where your foot is in space. If your lead foot is really far out in front of you, these things will slide pretty easy. If you keep body weight centered and you keep yourself balanced, they'll grip pretty easily as well. I would say the one thing is because the ankle collar is pretty low, and because, you know, just the minimalist nature of the uppers, they do allow a lot of degrees of freedom. Now you feel very centered and very stable going side to side laterally. It's just that the feeling of them is very minimalist, very speed focused shoe. It's not the Gel Resolution 9, it's not the Court FF3, it's not designed to be. I think I say this in every Solution Speed video. This is meant to be a super quick shoe, and it's meant to feel like the uppers are basically not there, which I think they did a pretty good job of that. So for sure, these are one of the fastest shoes in the market right now, if not number one, definitely in the top 3. I'd say the only thing you got to worry about is that you want these, like I said, pretty snug fit to your foot, and for that, you're going to need a little bit of break-in around the tongue area. So are these the best Solution Speeds yet? I think, yeah, for sure. There's really no doubt about that. The 2s were really good, but the 3s are just a step up. I think mainly in the category of outsole tread. These things are just really a great combination, right? A lot of different people are gonna find a lot of different things they like in the traction, the grip, the stability of this shoe. And especially for a shoe that's designed to get out of your way, especially for a shoe that's meant to feel like it's not on you, right? I think there's just a lot of trappings of the shoe that a lot of people are gonna like. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the FF3s. Are you upgrading to them, or are you sticking with the Gel Res 9 FF3 or something else? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you wanna see the older siblings to the Solution Speed FF3, the Asics Gel Resolution 9 and Gel Resolution 9 Clay go under the knife, make sure you click into this playlist up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.